a huge chat thread. Activists, please answer questions in the chat room. Thank you. I know what you want. I'm panning around now.
Texas is a conservative my view, is the Democratic Party has conceded half of the states in this country at the national level. In fact, we got to fight them in 50 states, including Texas.
All hail King Bernie!
I am here to say that when childhood poverty in Texas is 26%, we've got to take it on. When over 17% of the people in Texas are living in poverty, we've got to take it on. When 34% of people living in Texas have no health insurance, we've got to take it on. When Texas has a $7.25 minimum wage, we are going to take it on. And 1.5 million Black and Hispanic children live in families where no parents have a full-time year-round job. Yes, we are going to take on. Here's my point. If we are serious about changing America, we can't just do it in blue states. When working people are struggling to keep their heads above water, to get some health insurance, we got a 50-state strategy that we're going to implement. And it is my very strong belief that when we stand together, when we do not let Republicans or anyone else divide us by race, or the country that we came from, or our gender, or our sexual orientation, when we stand together, now what this campaign is fundamentally about. You help What this campaign is fundamentally about is a very simple, straightforward principle. And that is, enough is enough. This great country and our government belong to all of the people, and not just today, we live in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, but nobody knows it because almost all of the wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. And together, you and I are going to change that. The sad truth is that America today has more wealth and income inequality than any other major industrialized country on earth. And it is worse here right now than at any time since 1928. The issue of wealth and income inequality is the great moral issue of our time. And what I mean by that is something pretty simple. Are we content to live in a country where we are seeing a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, and yet we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any nation? And this is an economic issue. income and wealth inequality, because you don't create the kinds of jobs we need unless working people have money in their pockets to spend. So let me be as clear as I can be. There is something profoundly wrong when the top 0.1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. There is something profoundly wrong when 58% of all new income is going to the top 1%. There is something profoundly wrong when one family, the owners of Walmart, own more wealth than the bottom 130 million Americans. This is a rigged economy. This has got to change. The bottom 99%, and not just for the top 1%. This campaign is sending a loud
Sorry, I'm changing battery.
To the billionaire class, and that is, you can't have it all. Huge tax rates when children in America go hungry. You cannot continue to send our jobs to China while millions of Americans are looking for work. You cannot hide your profits in the Cayman Islands and other tax havens. In this country. And what we are saying, and here is the message to the billionaire class, your greed has got to end. Your greed is destroying America, and we are going to end your greed. It's not just the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. It has to do with the fact that for the last 40 years, the great middle class of this country, once the envy of the world, has been disappearing. Despite exploding technology and increased worker productivity, median family income today is almost $5,000 less than it was in 1999. In my state of Vermont, and I know it's true here in Texas as well, you have folks who are working not just one job, they're working 2 jobs, they're working 3 jobs, trying to cobble together some income and some health care. That is not what the American economy is supposed to be about. Every month, the government comes out with a report on unemployment, on official unemployment. And recently, the national report said that national unemployment was about 5.3%. But there is another government statistic out there that says that if you include those people who have given up looking for work, and the many millions of people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time, real unemployment is about 10.5%. And let me tell you something that we almost never discuss. Now, one of the fun things about running for President of the United States because we can bring issues onto the table that people are not talking about. And let me tell you one of them is. One of them is the tragically high rate of youth unemployment. Almost nobody is talking about this, but here are the facts. Study came out a couple of weeks ago from the Economic Policy Institute, one of the really good think tanks in Washington. This is what they said. They said for kids who have graduated high school, not gone to college, graduated high school, if those kids are between 17 and 20 and they are whites, youth unemployment is 33%. If they are Hispanic, youth unemployment is 36%. If they are African American, youth unemployment is 51%. Now, there is a reason. Some of you know that last week, President Obama did something that I thought was extraordinarily important. He visited a federal penitentiary. He did that to highlight a couple of very, very important points that we need to put on the table. And the first point is that in our country, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, including China. And the second point that he made is that a disproportionate number of those people in jail are black, Hispanic, and other minorities. Now, it seems to me that if we have over 30% youth unemployment in this country, if we are seeing so many of our young people's lives getting destroyed, then maybe it makes more sense to invest in jobs and education than towns and that has more people in jail than any other, but the best educated country. When we talk about the economy, it is not just income and wealth inequality, it is not just high unemployment. It has everything to do with the fact that millions of working people in this country are working for wages that are far, far too low. Yes, let me be as clear as I can be and tell you that in my view, the national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage and must be raised. To a living wage, which is $15 an hour. I do not believe that it is a radical idea, a socialistic idea, to say that if somebody works 40 hours a week, that person should not be living in poverty. What we also have to talk about, and guys, I need your help on this, ending the unfairness of women making 78 cents an hour. The men have got to stand by the women and make sure they are pay equity for women workers. Texas, you hear a whole lot about, quote unquote, family values. Family values, right? Now let me say a word or two about Republican family values. Their values are to tell women throughout this country that they do not have the right to control their own bodies. I disagree. Their view is to tell women that they cannot even purchase the contraceptives they need. I disagree. Their view is to tell our gay brothers and sisters that they do not have the right to be married. I disagree. But let me take a moment to tell you about real family values, values that strengthen families. And that is the need for us to end the international embarrassment of being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee family and medical leave for our people. Now you tell me, when we talk about family values, today in Texas, today in Vermont, a woman is giving birth to a baby, maybe the most important moment in her life, and obviously her baby's life. Big day for the baby. And here's what goes on in America. If that family, that mom and dad have money, mother and dad can stay home with their baby, bond with their baby, get to love their baby, get to know their baby for weeks and months. And that's the way it should be. But if that mother here in Texas or in Vermont does not have adequate income, that mother may have to go back to work in 4 days, 6 days, 7 days. That is not a family value. And that is why I will fight for 12 weeks of paid family leave. A few weeks ago, Jeb Bush said, try to walk it back, but his point was that he thought that Americans need to work a little bit longer hours. Let me respectfully tell Governor Bush that the American people today, sadly, because of the collapse of the American middle class, are working longer hours than are the people of any other major country on earth. Work longer hours, we need higher wages and better income. And here's the truth. And this is really amazing and kind of tells you where we are as an economy. You know, you remember reading in your textbooks, literally 100 years ago, in the early 1900s, workers demonstrated, and they held up placards, and they said, we want a 40-hour work week. We are not beasts of burden. We want leisure time. We want to be with our families. We want to get an education. We don't want to work all of the time. Well, 100 years have come and gone. And today, 85% of working men, 66% of working women are working longer than 40 hours a week. And at the very least, what we have got to do is make sure that every worker in this country has paid vacation time. When pollsters go out and they ask the American people and they say, well, what is uppermost on your mind? What's worrying you the most? What people always respond with is a four-letter word, J-O-B-S. And they understand that if you are 50 or 60 tomorrow, you can get a pink slip. And somebody will replace you half your age at half the wages. And they understand that many employers are hiring people for 29 hours a week in order to avoid benefits. And they understand that tomorrow they may go to work and their boss will tell them, oh, I'm sorry, we're moving to China and we're shutting down your plant. And that is why we need a massive federal jobs program to put our people back to work. In Vermont and in Texas and all over this country, we have bridges and roads and water systems and wastewater plants and a rail system that is falling apart. That is why I have introduced legislation and will make it happen if I am president to spend $1 trillion rebuilding our public infrastructure. And when we do that, when we make our roads better, when we deal with traffic congestion, when we make our bridges functional, when we have the best rail system in the world, that $1 trillion creates up to 13 million decent paying jobs. And when we talk about jobs, our goal is not just to create jobs, it is to prevent jobs from being lost. And that is why you are looking at a U.S. Senator who in his congressional career voted against NAFTA, permanent normal trade relations. And why I am helping to lead the opposition to this TPP trade agreement. Policy, which creates jobs here in America. Every night on TV, every multinational corporation is telling us that we got to buy this and we got to buy that. Well, if they want us to buy their products, how about producing those products in Texas and in Vermont? Words like illegality, greed, recklessness, these are just some of the words we use to describe Wall Street. The crooks, and I use that word advisedly, on Wall Street, because of their greed and recklessness, brought about the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And we're still suffering from it. And greed and illegal behavior resulted in millions of Americans losing their jobs, their homes, and their life savings. And yet today, a number of the largest banks that we bailed out because they were too big to fail are much bigger today than they were when we bailed them out. In my view, we need a banking system which invests in small and medium-sized businesses, create jobs in this country. makes Wall Street even richer than they are today. And that is why I believe, number one, we've got to bring back Glass-Steagall regulation. And number two, we have got to break up these banks. If they're too big to fail, they are too big to resist. There are so many important issues out there, but let me touch on one that really impacts every other issue. And that is the disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. Now here's what that is about. Here's what that's about. By a 5-4 vote, by one vote majority, the Supreme Court said to the wealthiest people in this country, they said, okay guys, you already own much of the U.S. economy. Now we're going to give you the opportunity to own the United States government. That's exactly what they said, and that's exactly what is happening right now. You have, and I want you to appreciate where we are at on this and how significant this is. You have one family, the extreme right-wing Koch brothers. This family, worth about $85 billion, is going to be spending more money in this election cycle than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Now, when you have one family, the second wealthiest family in America, spending more money than either major political party, that does not sound like democracy to me. It sounds like oligarchy.
Down with the false kings.
I have not made many campaign promises during this campaign. But here's one I have made, and that is any nominee of mine to the U.S. Supreme Court is, in fact, going to have to pass a litmus test. And that litmus test is that he or she will vote to overturn Citizens United. Overturning Citizens United is not enough. It's a start. It's a start, and I want you to all appreciate this. Right now, for most of the candidates out there, their super PACs will have more money than will the candidates' own funding, which means that in most cases, campaigns will be directly owned by the wealthiest people in this country. So not only do we have to overturn Citizens United, if we want a vibrant democracy where any person, any working person in this country, regardless of his or her political views, if they want to run for office, I want them to be able to run for office without begging money from the wealthy and the powerful. And that is why we need why we need public funding of elections. I want our country to be a vibrant democracy where people are discussing and debating issues, where people are running for office, where we have one of the highest voter turnouts in the world, not one of the lowest. Let me say a word about education. We live in a highly competitive global economy. And if we are going to succeed economically as a nation, we need to have the best educated workforce in the world. And what is going on today is almost unimaginable. We have, as we speak right now, hundreds of thousands of bright, hardworking, capable, young men and women who want to get a higher education. They want to go to college, but they can't go to college because their families lack the money. Now that is wrong in two respects. If you have a low-income or a working-class kid who's doing well in school, who wants to make it into the middle class of this country, that young person should have that right to get the education he or she needs. We should not be pulling out the ladder under them as they struggle to live productive lives. But the second issue is that if we are going to do well internationally in the future, we have got to make sure that all of our people get all of the education they need. And that is why I have introduced legislation that would make every public college and university in America tuition free. Concept is so important. Do we have any teachers here in the room? And I think the teachers would concur with me in saying that we have kids in the 4th grade and the 6th grade. And these kids grow up in a family where mom and dad never went to college. Their friends' parents never went to college. Few people in their community ever went to college. And they believe that no matter how hard they work, they're never going to be able to make it to college, and maybe they won't even be able to graduate high school. And what I want all over this country is for kids in the 3rd grade and in the 5th grade to understand that if they work hard in school, they will be able to get a college education. My father never had a college education. Their 2 sons were able to do that. I want every kid in America who has the ability and the energy and the desire to have that right as well. But when we talk about the financing of higher education, there is another issue equally important, and that is we have millions of Americans, including some I'm sure in this room, who are carrying unconscionably high rates of student debt. Now what sense is it that people graduate college $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in debt and end up paying 20–25% of their income paying back that debt? These are people who can't get married and have kids, they can't buy a home, they can't buy a car. I have talked to doctors today whose crime in life was to go to medical school. Another young woman who went to dental school. She got out of dental school $400,000 in debt. That is why my legislation will significantly lower interest rates on student debt. If you can refinance your home today at 2% 2 or 3%, you should not be paying 9 or 10% interest rates and so forth. And furthermore, the United States government should not be profiteering, making billions in profit off student loans. Now, some people say, Bernie, good idea, it's expensive. They're right. What I just described to you cost us about $70 billion a year. That's a lot of money. And you know how we're going to get that money? We're going to put a tax on Wall Street. When Wall Street collapsed, the American people bailed them out. Now it's their turn. There is another issue out there that it is absolutely imperative that we address, and that is understanding our responsibility as adults and parents. My wife Jane and I have 4 kids and 7 grandchildren. And I believe that we have a moral responsibility to lead this planet in a way that is habitable. Understand that many Republicans don't believe that climate change is real. It is. And I would urge them to stop worrying about their campaign donors like the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil and start worrying about the American people. Said is climate change is real, caused by human activity, and is already causing devastating problems in America. Take a look at California and water. Take a look at Pakistan and a heat wave. And what the scientists tell us is that if we do not take a short window of opportunity, this planet Earth could be between 5 degrees and 10 degrees warmer by the end of this century. And what that means is more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more rising sea levels, more acidification of the ocean. And what the CIA and the Department of Defense tell us is that when around the world people don't have enough water, when they don't have the kind of land they need to grow their crops, there will be an increased level of international conflict. We have the capabilities, we have the technology to lead the world in transforming our energy system. We have got to move away from fossil fuel for energy efficiency, wind, solar, geothermal, and other sustainable energy. And I do understand, speaking here in Texas, a fossil fuel state, that there are people who are worried about their jobs, and that's a legitimate concern. And any serious climate change legislation has got to be clear that we are going to protect those workers who lose their jobs. The United States of America, as I hope many of you know, and I know you do, is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. Affordable Care Act, which I supported and got some good provisions in, still leaves 35 million people without any health insurance and more who are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. In my view, the United States of America has got to join the rest of the industrialized world. We need a national health care program. We need a Medicare for all single payer program. Now, I have been involved in politics for more than a few years. And it doesn't bother me when corporate America with a big money interest attack me. I'm used to it. And in fact, as Franklin Delano Roosevelt said many, many years ago, I welcome their hatred because we are going to take them. Politics is not very complicated. Basically, you have to decide which side are you on. Remember that song, Which Side Are You On? Well, I will stand with working people, and I'm prepared to take on the building. I don't mind when the big money interests attack me, but I'll tell you what I do want. And I would hope that every person in this room shares this concern. In Texas, in Vermont, and all over this country, you have working people who are working longer hours for lower wages. You have people who do not have health insurance or have huge deductibles. You have people who cannot afford to send their kids to college or provide decent child care for their kids. And yet, those people are voting Republican, voting against their very own best interests. And we have got to reach out to those. We have got to go beyond our comfort zone. It's easy to... It is easy to talk to people who you agree with. It is harder to talk to people who differ with you on this or that issue. But I want you to do me a favor and ask your Republican friends and family members and co-workers, ask them whether they really think that they should be supporting a party which in Washington, and I'm the ranking member of the Budget Committee, so I know a little bit about this. That is the leader of the opposition, the Democrats on the Budget Committee. What the Republican budget did is made massive cuts to Medicare. It threw 27 million Americans off of health insurance. At a time when we want to make college more affordable, it cut Pell Grants by $90 billion over a 10-year period. At a time when families in your state and my state are struggling to put food on the table, they made massive cuts in nutrition programs. And to add insult to injury, they gave over $250 billion in tax breaks over a 10-year period to the wealthiest 0.2%. I would like you to go to your Republican friends and family members and ask them whether they think that makes sense, whether they think that that set of policies of people who want to cut Social Security, who want to cut Medicare, who want to cut Medicaid, who want to cut or destroy the Environmental Protection Agency, whether that makes sense for their kids and their parents. And that's why I'm here in Texas today, to say that we have got to take on that ideology. The reason that Republicans win is it's not complicated. What they have done for decades is try to divide us up. My guess is you have never seen a 30-second ad on Texas TV which says what the Republicans really believe, and that is, vote for me so I can give tax breaks to billionaires and cut your Social Security. But what they have done very cleverly for decades is divide us up, black against white, men against women, native-born against immigrants, straight against gay. And what we have got to understand is the way we beat them is that when they try to divide us, we come together. This is among other things what I mean. My dad was born in Poland, came to this country at the age of 17. I am the son of an immigrant, and I know a little bit about immigrants' life. Came to this country at 17, had a nickel in his pocket, couldn't speak a word of English. In my view, my strong view, we have got to fight for a path towards citizenship, for revenue. We have got to bring families together, not divide them. This country, as everybody in this room knows, starting from the first Europeans to come here, and what they did to the Native Americans, and the horrors of slavery, and discrimination against the Irish, the Italians, the Jews, whatever. We have a long, long history of racism in this country, and by the way, we should be proud that we have made a lot of progress in overcoming that racism. We should be proud that in 2008, the American people looked at the ideas and the character of a candidate, not the color of his skin. But we should also be aware and knowledgeable that sadly racism continues to exist in this country. We have made progress, and I'm proud of that, you're proud of that. But when we look at names like Sandra Bland, or Freddie Gray, and too many others, we understand that what we want is a nation where a young black man or woman can walk down the street not worried about being falsely arrested or beaten or something. Let me conclude by saying this. This is, as I mentioned earlier, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And that means that our job is not to think small, but to think big. That means that we should not be debating whether we cut education by 2% or 4%, or throwing this many millions of people off of health care, or that many people off of health care. What that means is we have got to think about the kind of beautiful country that we want us to become. And that is a country where all of our people have jobs at decent wages. A country in which health care is not a privilege, but a right. A country in which when a mom or dad goes to work, they know that their kids, their babies, their little ones, are being taken care of in the highest quality pre-K and child care programs in the world. When my Republican colleagues tell us that we have got to cut Social Security, we say no. You're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security. Because we know that millions of seniors cannot survive on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year, and we're going to lift the cap on taxable income. And when some Republicans tell us that we got to cut veterans' benefits, we say you're not going to balance. You're not going to balance the budget on the backs of the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us. And when people try to divide us up, we know that no matter their race, no matter their religion, their disability, their sexual orientation, the country that they came from, we are going to fight for the promise of full equality for all Americans. By telling you something that no other presidential candidate will tell you. And that is, given the economic and political reality of today, a today in which the billionaire class has unbelievable economic power, political power, power over the media, in which large campaign contributors basically own many politicians, there is nothing or very little that a president can do alone. What we need is a political revolution in this country. And that means that millions of us come together to reclaim our birthright, our government, and our nation. I can't do it alone, you can't do it alone. We have got to come together. Now, it is true that the Koch brothers and the other billionaires and the super PACs have unlimited, and I mean unlimited sums of money. And that's a problem for us. They got a lot of money. But at the end of the day, we have got and we have the people, and the people standing together are more powerful